What's going on, guys? John here from What's Spinning here tonight. Chat about this new Glazerr album. Glazerr are a LA-based trio. They've blended indie rock, garage rock, noise pop, and a couple of other genres for the last couple of years. And for a while now, I've been a casual fan of these guys. I've never exactly hated Glazerr. I like their sort of noise pop tendencies that they get to have sometimes. 2014's Haxel Princess, solid debut. Tracks like White's Not My Color This Evening and the title track were genuinely great tunes. But I just felt like Glazerr at the time had so much personality that they weren't letting on yet. Even to the point where I had basically the same exact thoughts, even lesser so, on their next album, 2017's Apocalyptic. This was a massively hyped album at the time, and one that I really wanted to review at the time, but I honestly just didn't have much to say about it. Once again, Glazerr had so much personality deep down, but I just felt like they weren't letting it out in the right way. And I just felt like at the end of the day, the band played it safe. But I certainly have enjoyed some of these new singles. They're very noisy, they're very crunchy, they're sort of a throwback, kind of like all these girl pool singles that I was chatting about the other day. But most importantly, they've been letting a lot of personality fly, so I'm really excited to chat about this album. This album starts out with Ohio, and it is actually a really thunderous start for Glazerr. Here, I really enjoy how they've drifted away from that sort of early punk sound that they were going for, and in its place, we get a much more guitar-driven sound. This track is anthemic as hell, but most importantly, it is absolutely filled to the brim with personality. And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, I've really never heard Clementine Creevy come off so dynamic as a frontwoman. Like, her performance here is truly commanding and pretty stunning. Her final repeated yells of "just take me away" are just so hypnotic. It's a fantastic tune, and in more ways than one, it really ushers in the sounds of this album. On the other hand, Daddi is a little bit more whimsical feeling, a whole lot less guitar driven. This was a big single going into this album. But Clementine really makes this one stand out, mostly due to her very dynamic vocal performance once again. She goes into these very heavy themes of control and abuse, and honestly, it gets pretty heavy at times. But Clementine's gigantic performance here just comes off so rebellious, so much so that this one ends up coming off empowering. And it just makes this track a must listen, really. And sure, this isn't exactly the punchiest or catchiest track of the bunch, but this is a stunning, powerful tune that really deserves to be heard. On Wasted None, we sort of see the return of these noise pop influences that the band has worked with for years, and honestly, yeah, it's still really enjoyable. I love just how massive these guitars are, match up with Clementine's very soft, tender vocals here. It makes for a great dynamic. Not to mention, I love just how explosive this one gets at its chorus. It's a pretty straightforward tune, but hot damn is it ever exciting and very fun to listen to. But this track to me is the perfect example of just what was lacking on those first few Glazerr projects. This track is just so much more interesting. Most importantly, Clementine is just absolutely bursting with personality. This track is pretty damn heavy, pretty damn muscular at times, but it still has the pop sensibility to really stick with you. On the other hand, Self-Explained, it's much more bouncy, much more pop-oriented, has this very innocent feel to it, especially in Clementine's very sincere performance. Not to mention, this is just something that I truly love. This is some of Clementine's most universally understandable lyrics here. She goes very deep into spending time alone and how she doesn't want to be judged by it. It's a feeling that I'm sure plenty of us have had over the years. Not to mention, I love just how wild and out of control the guitars come off by the end of this one. It's a great tune. We do, however, get some tracks on here that are a little bit too much of a stretch, like Isolation. This one has a slow, dreary blues feel to it that honestly, on paper, sounds like something I would eat up. But this one is just so bland outside of a few punchy guitar licks here and there. Not to mention, sadly, this may be Clementine's most faceless vocal performance of the whole album. As a matter of fact, the more they drift away from this more guitar-driven sound, the more faceless Glazerr starts to become. Like Juicy Socks, for example. It's just so unbelievably average. It has a strong chorus and all, but the verses here are some of the most genuinely bland of the entire album. It's fine and all, but this honestly reminds me a lot of what just made me feel so lukewarm on this band for years. Pieces, once again, takes things back in a sort of poppier direction, and honestly, it's not terrible. As a matter of fact, a lot of the poppier tracks on here are still pretty darn good. It may not be the crunchy, muscular guitar rock that this album started out with, but seriously, Clementine's performance on tracks like this are just so likable. Pieces overall is really charming, really a decent tune. I just kind of wish maybe it was a little bit catchier, but still solid tune. You get a couple more tunes on here that for one reason or another are really just sort of average. That's Not My Real being one of them. It's a little punky, there's a little attitude thrown in there, but honestly, Clementine's performance here just kind of reminds me of some of her performances from their first few albums, just not nearly as filled with so much personality. The only real reason I don't like some of the punkier tunes on here is I feel like with some of the crunchier, more guitar-driven tracks on this album, Cherry Glazerr took their time. They're letting tracks really flow on their own. In times like this, I just kind of feel like they've rushed things. Not to say that I don't like punk or just even Cherry Glazerr doing punk, I just don't feel like this is a great sound for them. Like I said, this track isn't the worst thing in the world, but it just gives me all these horrible memories of trying to be into these guys for years and just finding little details that just annoyed me about them. And I have basically a lot of the same feelings towards Stupid Fish late in the album. Like, I feel like Clementine's performances really do take a nosedive in the second half, at least during the verses. More often than not, she can write a peppy chorus, but some of her performances on the verses here are just so bland. Almost none of it is truly bad either. It's just not as good as some of the earlier tunes here. There are some great one-liners on this track, and all the elements that made a great Cherry Glazerr track earlier are certainly here. It's just not working for me. Thankfully, with Distressor, they actually pulled together a fantastic finale. Not only is this track just overall heavier, there's a sense of mystery here that I really didn't expect to hear from Cherry Glazerr, and it comes off really cool. Clementine here has a genuine sense of paranoia to her verse. She pulls it off wonderfully too. It's heavy when it needs to be, but it's also super catchy enough to really make you come back for a couple of extra listens. This track is easily the darkest thing that Cherry Glazerr has done so far, and I'm all for it. So overall, like, I still don't completely get the hype around this band. Some people are like totally into this album, and I still think that this is by far their best album. I have a whole lot more to say about this album than I have on any of the past Cherry Glazerr albums, but I still think that they're holding back just a little bit. They have so much wonderful personality that I just want to see them let loose, and you see that in big moments here. Such great personal tracks and just blasts of emotion. Those are great, but then there's these tunes here also that just kind of come off faceless and bland. They're on the right track though, and I really am excited to hear what they do next down the road. I'm feeling a very light 7 on this, but let me know what you guys think down below. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you'd like for me to chat about in the future. And as always, have a great day, guys.